I was betrayed by my own blood, but a stranger helped me reclaim everything. You'll never amount to anything, my father, Arthur, said, his voice cold and final as he slid the check back across the kitchen table. You don't have the drive. You never did. Chasing this foolish dream is just proof you're wasting your life. The $50,000 check, every penny I'd saved since I was 16, working double shifts at the warehouse while taking night classes, felt like it was burning a hole in the wood grain between us. This wasn't just about money. This was a test of my worth as a son, as a man. And in his eyes, I had just failed spectacularly. I didn't shout. I didn't plead. I simply looked at the man who had spent my entire life teaching me that security was everything and ambition was a sin. I felt something in me, some final thread of seeking his approval, snap quietly like a guitar string pulled too tight. I understand, I said, my voice eerily calm as I picked up the check, folded it neatly, and placed it back in my pocket. 5 years later, my tech company's IPO made me a billionaire. And when my father showed up at my office building with his hand out, begging for help, I gave him exactly what he'd taught me was most important, a lesson in consequences. Justice must be restored and arrogance punished. You won't believe how a complete stranger became the ally that helped me reclaim everything while my own family tried to bury me. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe and let us know where you're watching from in the comments. My name is Caleb. For 28 years, I was the dutiful son who colored inside the lines. While my older brother Brandon ran a flashy car dealership and lived large, I worked quietly, saved obsessively, and dreamed carefully. My father, Arthur, was a retired accountant who viewed life through spreadsheets and risk assessments. After my mother died when I was 12, he became even more rigid. Safety wasn't just important to him. It was the only religion he believed in. Get a stable job. Save your money. Don't reach beyond your grasp. These were the commandments I grew up with. For 6 years, I had been developing something in secret. Nexus Stream, a revolutionary data compression algorithm that could reduce file sizes by 80% without quality loss. It wasn't just a pipe dream. I had working prototypes, interest from potential clients, and a business plan that made sense. All I needed was seed money to build the infrastructure and hire a small team. That night in his kitchen, I laid it all out for him. I showed him projections, letters of intent from companies, technical specifications. My stepmother Pamela sat beside him, her arms crossed, already disapproving before I'd finished speaking. This is fantasy, Arthur said, barely glancing at my materials. Do you know how many startups fail in the first year? 90%. You're asking me to watch you throw away 6 years of hard work on a gamble. Dad, this isn't a gamble. The technology works. I have clients ready too. You have nothing, he cut me off. You have ideas. Ideas don't pay mortgages. They don't put food on tables. Pamela nodded vigorously. Your father is trying to protect you, Caleb. Why can't you see that? Brandon has a real business. Tangible assets. Customers walking through the door every day. There it was. The comparison I'd lived with my entire life. The plant is hiring, Arthur continued, sliding a newspaper clipping across the table. Operations manager. Good benefits. $55,000 a year to start. That's security. That's real. I looked at the clipping, then at my father's stern face. I'm not asking for a handout. This is a loan. I'll pay you back with interest. No, he said flatly. I won't enable this fantasy. You need to grow up, Caleb. Accept reality. Some people are meant to build empires. Others are meant to work for them. There's no shame in knowing which one you are. The words hit me like a physical blow. Pamela's satisfied smirk told me she agreed with every syllable. I gathered my materials slowly, my hands steady despite the rage building in my chest. You're wrong about me, I said quietly. I hope I am, Arthur replied. But his tone said he knew I'd be back in a week, defeated and ready to accept that plant job. But I've watched you your whole life, son. I know what you're capable of. Caleb's own father just crushed his dreams and compared him unfavorably to his golden child brother. But what Arthur doesn't know is that his rejection is about to fuel the most spectacular rise in tech history and the most calculated revenge imaginable. A week later, I was at the Riverside Public Library, the only place I could access reliable internet for free. I was filling out the application for the plant job, each keystroke feeling like another nail in the coffin of my dreams. I stepped away to use the restroom, leaving my email tab open, a careless mistake I'd never made before. When I returned, my screen had gone to sleep, and I woke it with a touch of the mouse. That's when I saw it. A notification for a new email in a thread I wasn't part of. The preview showed enough to make my blood run cold. Caleb's inheritance, family discussion. My hands trembled as I opened my email fully and found the thread. It was between Arthur, Brandon, and Pamela, accidentally CC'd to my old family email address that I rarely checked anymore. From Arthur Wellington to Brandon Wellington, Pamela Wellington. Subject: Caleb's inheritance, family discussion. I've decided to redirect the $85,000 from Susan's life insurance policy toward Brandon's dealership expansion. Caleb would have blown his portion in 6 months with this ridiculous tech fantasy. This way, the money stays with family who knows its value. Brandon has proven himself. Caleb needs to learn that success comes from hard work in real industries, not chasing Silicon Valley fairy tales. From Brandon Wellington. Thanks, Dad. The expansion will add 2 service bays. Caleb never needed to know about Mom's policy anyway. What he doesn't know won't hurt him. From Pamela Wellington. You're doing the right thing, Arthur. Some children are investments. Others are just expenses. I read the thread 3 times, each word cutting deeper than the last. This wasn't about protecting me from failure. This wasn't about tough love or practical wisdom. My mother had left me money that was legally mine, and my father had quietly stolen it, giving it to Brandon instead while telling me to settle for a factory job. The betrayal wasn't about the $50,000 I'd asked to borrow. It was about the $85,000 that was already mine, money from my own mother, who had believed in me when she was alive. Arthur had taken that faith, that final gift, and given it to his favorite son. I saved the email thread and took screenshots of everything. Then I closed the library computer and walked out into the afternoon sun, my mind crystallizing into absolute clarity. The rejection wasn't just about a loan. Caleb's father literally stole his inheritance from his deceased mother and gave it to his brother. This isn't a family disagreement anymore. This is theft, betrayal, and favoritism that cuts to the bone. Everything changes now. I didn't confront them. Anger would have been satisfying, but useless. Instead, I became methodical, using every skill I'd developed over years of coding and problem solving. First, I saved the entire email thread to 3 different cloud services and printed physical copies. Then I started digging through public records at the county clerk's office. It took me 2 days, but I found it. The life insurance policy from my mother's employer, clearly stating that the $85,000 death benefit was to be split evenly between her 2 sons. I found more. Arthur had co-signed a $200,000 loan for Brandon's dealership expansion using his house as collateral. The same house he'd told me was fully paid off and untouchable when I'd asked about a home equity loan for my startup. Next, I needed direct confirmation. I called my father from a burner phone, using a voice modulation app to disguise my voice as a loan officer from First National Bank. Mr. Wellington, I'm calling to verify the co-signer information on loan application BR 449 for Wellington Auto Group. Can you confirm you're willing to guarantee this loan? Yes, of course. Arthur's voice came through clearly. My son Brandon is very responsible. His dealership is doing excellent business. And you have other children, sir? One other son, but he's not involved in this. Brandon is the one with business sense. I recorded every word. Finally, I sent my father one more text from my real number. Dad, I've been thinking. Maybe you're right. Could you loan me even just $10,000 to get started? I'll pay it back in 6 months, guaranteed. His response came within minutes. Caleb, we've been over this. I can't support bad decisions. You need to focus on building a real career, not chasing impossible dreams. This conversation is over. Screenshot. Saved. Documented. I spent the next week building a comprehensive file. Timeline. Bank records. The email thread. My mother's life insurance policy. Arthur's loan co-signature for Brandon. Recorded phone calls. Text message exchanges. I organized it all into a presentation folder labeled The Wellington Family Investment Strategy. But I didn't act on it. Not yet. Because the best revenge wouldn't be exposing them immediately. The best revenge would be proving them catastrophically wrong and then letting them watch everything they'd stolen slip through their fingers. Caleb now has ammunition that could destroy his father and brother legally and socially. But he's playing a longer game. What he's about to do will make the stolen $85,000 look like pocket change and turn his father's greatest insult into his most powerful motivation. I left town with my $50,000 and a fury that burned cold and clean. I moved 4 hours away to a city where nobody knew the Wellington name, where I could rebuild myself from scratch. What my family didn't know was that Nexus Stream wasn't just a good idea, it was revolutionary. For 6 years, I'd been developing a compression algorithm that every major tech expert said was theoretically impossible. While my father was teaching me that dreams were dangerous, I was solving problems that MIT graduates couldn't crack. I rented a tiny studio apartment in the cheapest part of town. No furniture except a desk, a chair, and a mattress on the floor. I ate instant ramen and peanut butter sandwiches. I worked 20-hour days, coding until my eyes burned and my fingers cramped. But I wasn't alone. At a startup networking event 3 weeks after arriving, I met someone who would change everything. An older woman named Veronica Hayes. She was a semi-retired venture capitalist who'd made her fortune in the early internet boom and was now angel investing in promising technologies. I almost didn't approach her. I was underdressed, exhausted, and felt like an imposter surrounded by polished entrepreneurs with expensive haircuts and practiced pitches. But she approached me instead. "You look like you haven't slept in days," she said, handing me a coffee from the refreshment table. "That either means you're about to fail spectacularly or succeed brilliantly." "Which one?" "Succeed," I said, surprised by my own certainty. "Show me." I pulled out my laptop right there in the convention center hallway and demonstrated Nexus Stream. I showed her how a 500 megabyte video file could compress to 100 megabytes with zero perceptible quality loss. I showed her the algorithm's efficiency compared to existing compression standards. Veronica watched in silence, her expression unreadable. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "How much money do you have?" she asked. 50,000. "It's everything I own." "How much do you need?" "Another 150,000 to build the infrastructure and hire 2 developers. Then I can start taking on clients." She pulled out her phone and made a call right there. "Preston, I'm sending you specifications for something called Nexus Stream. Drop everything and analyze it. I need your assessment in 3 hours." Preston, I learned later, was one of the top compression technology experts in the country. 3 hours later, Veronica called me. "Preston says your algorithm shouldn't be possible, which means you've done something remarkable. I'm investing $200,000 for 20% equity. But here's my condition. You take a modest salary, you hire smart people, and you don't let ego destroy what you're building. Deal." I felt tears threatening, but kept my voice steady. "Deal." "One more question," Veronica said. "What's driving you?" "Because passion fades, but purpose doesn't." I told her everything. The rejection, the stolen inheritance, the father who believed I'd never amount to anything. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said something I've never forgotten. "The best revenge isn't proving someone wrong. It's becoming so successful that their opinion becomes irrelevant. Build something so big that whether they believe in you or not becomes meaningless." It was exactly what I needed to hear. Just when Caleb seemed completely alone, a stranger saw his potential where his own family saw nothing. Veronica isn't just an investor. She's the mentor and ally his father should have been. The real family isn't always the one you're born into. The next 3 years were brutal. I hired 2 brilliant developers. A woman named Autumn who'd been pushed out of a major tech company for challenging her sexist boss, and a guy named Leo who'd dropped out of graduate school to care for his sick mother and never returned. We were 3 people who'd been underestimated and discarded. We worked like we had something to prove, because we did. Nexus Stream's first client was a small medical imaging company that needed to store massive files efficiently. We reduced their storage costs by 70%. They told 5 other companies. Those companies told 10 more. Word spread through the tech industry like wildfire. We weren't just good. We were solving a problem that everyone had assumed was unsolvable. By year 2, we had 47 major clients, including 2 Fortune 500 companies. I never took more than a $60,000 salary, plowing every dollar back into research and development. Autumn and Leo became not just employees, but true partners. We split equity fairly, and when we succeeded, we all succeeded. Veronica watched it all from the board, offering guidance, but never interfering. You're doing something I rarely see, she told me during a quarterly review. You're building a company with integrity. That's rarer than innovation. Year 4, we got the call that changes everything in the tech world, a buyout offer from a major corporation for $400 million. I was in our cramped office when Veronica called. Turn it down, she said immediately. What? What? Because Nexus Stream isn't worth $400 million. It's worth $4 billion. Take this company public, Caleb. Show the world what you've built. She was right. We filed for an IPO in year 5. The night before our stock went public, I sat alone in my apartment, a nicer one now, but still modest, and thought about my father's words. You'll never amount to anything. Tomorrow, those words would become the most expensive mistake he'd ever made. Our IPO was the third largest tech debut of the year. When trading closed on day 1, Nexus Stream was valued at $6.2 billion. My personal stake was worth $1.7 billion. I was 33 years old, and I'd just become one of the youngest self-made billionaires in the country. The news hit my hometown like a tsunami. The local paper ran a front-page story. Local man's tech company makes him a billionaire. They interviewed my high school teachers, former co-workers, anyone who'd known me. My phone exploded with messages from people I hadn't heard from in years. Everyone suddenly wanted to reconnect, to celebrate, to be part of my success story. Brandon called first, his voice overly cheerful and fake. Caleb, man, I saw the news. This is incredible. I always knew you had it in you, little brother. The same brother who'd called me a dreamer and told me to grow up. Thanks, Brandon, I said neutrally. Listen, I'm actually in town for a few days. We should grab dinner, catch up. I've got some investment opportunities you might be interested in. I'm pretty busy. Maybe another time. Come on, family should stick together, right? Especially now that you've hit it big. I felt ice forming in my chest. I'll think about it. 3 days later, Arthur left a voicemail. His voice was stiff, formal, uncomfortable. Caleb, your mother would have been very proud of what you've accomplished. Perhaps we could meet sometime to discuss family matters. Call me back when you have a chance. He weaponized my dead mother's memory to manipulate me into reconnecting. The mother whose inheritance he'd stolen to give to Brandon. I didn't call him back. Instead, I had my assistant compile every article, every interview, every mention of Nexus Stream's success. I wanted them to see exactly what they'd dismissed as a foolish dream. Caleb has become exactly what his father said he'd never be: wildly successful, respected, and wealthy beyond measure. Now his family wants back in. But they have no idea that Caleb has been documenting everything, and he's about to teach them the most expensive lesson of their lives. 4 months after the IPO, Arthur and Brandon showed up at Nexus Stream headquarters unannounced. They'd somehow convinced my assistant they were family and needed to see me urgently. When security called to verify, I almost said no. Then I realized this was the moment I'd been unconsciously waiting for. The confrontation where I held all the cards. Send them to conference room B, I said. I made them wait 45 minutes. Let them sit in our sleek conference room with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, surrounded by evidence of everything I'd built without them. When I finally entered, they both stood. Arthur looked older, grayer, diminished somehow in his cheap sport coat. Brandon had gained weight and lost the cocky swagger he used to carry. Caleb, Arthur began, extending his hand. I didn't take it. I sat down at the head of the table and gestured for them to sit. You've done well for yourself, Arthur continued, trying to smile. Very well. Your mother. Don't. I cut him off. Don't mention her. Uncomfortable silence. Brandon jumped in, his salesman instincts kicking in. Look, we know we haven't been as close as we should be as a family. That's on us. But we're here now because family should stick together, right? Especially in difficult times, Arthur added. There it was. The real reason for the visit. What difficult times? I asked, though I already knew. I'd been monitoring Brandon's dealership through public business filings. It was drowning in debt. Brandon shifted uncomfortably. The car business has been tough lately. That loan Dad co-signed. The bank is being unreasonable about the terms. If I could just get some capital to restructure. How much capital? I asked. Brandon glanced at Arthur, then back at me. $5 million would completely turn things around. And with your resources, that's like pocket change, right? I'll pay you back with interest. Better than any bank could offer. I stood and walked to the window, letting them sweat. Then I turned back around. Do you remember 5 years ago when I came to you? I directed the question at Arthur. I asked you for $50,000. Not 5 million. 50,000. Arthur's face flushed. Caleb, that was different. You told me I'd never amount to anything. You said I didn't have the drive. You called my dream a fantasy. My voice was calm, almost conversational. Do you remember what else you said? He looked down at the table. You said some people are meant to build empires, and others are meant to work for them. You said there was no shame in knowing which one I was. I was trying to protect you, Arthur said weakly. I pulled a folder from the shelf behind me, the one I'd been carrying for 5 years. I slid it across the table. What's this? Brandon asked. Open it. Arthur's hands trembled as he opened the folder. Inside was the first page, a copy of the $50,000 check he'd rejected, along with my business plan for Nexus Stream. The same plan he'd dismissed without reading. Keep going, I said. The next page was my mother's life insurance policy. Arthur went pale. That's a legal document showing that Mom left $85,000 to be split between me and Brandon. I said, my voice harder now. Want to explain why I never saw a penny of that, Dad? Brandon looked confused, flipping through the pages. What is he talking about? The money you used to expand your dealership? I said to Brandon. Half of that was mine. Mom wanted me to have it. Dad gave it all to you instead. Jesus, Dad, Brandon whispered. You told me that was from your retirement account. There's more, I continued. Email exchanges where you discuss how I'd blow the money. Text messages where you tell me to focus on a real career. And my personal favorite, a recorded call where you tell a loan officer that I'm the son without business sense. Arthur was shaking now, his face buried in his hands. I had my PR director, a woman named Colette, sitting in the corner of the room with a tablet, documenting everything. Arthur and Brandon hadn't even noticed her. Here's what's going to happen, I said. You're going to leave this office. You're not getting $5 million. You're not getting $5. And if you ever try to claim you supported me, if you ever try to take credit for my success, I will release every single document in that folder to the media. Brandon found his voice. You'd really destroy your own family? I looked at him. You already did that when you took money that belonged to me. I'm just making sure you can't profit from the aftermath. The confrontation wasn't just emotionally satisfying, it was documented. Caleb's PR director witnessed everything, ensuring that if his family ever tries to rewrite history, he has proof of their betrayal and their attempted manipulation. The fallout was immediate and devastating for them. Brandon's dealership, already struggling, collapsed within 2 months. When word spread through the business community that his own billionaire brother had refused to help him, investors and banks lost confidence. The perception was simple. If family won't invest, why should strangers? The $200,000 loan Arthur had co-signed went into default. The bank foreclosed on his house, the house I'd grown up in, the house my mother had loved. But I wasn't cruel. Through an anonymous LLC, I bought the house at auction and offered to rent it back to Arthur and Pamela at a below-market rate. They never knew it was me. They just knew some mysterious benefactor was giving them a second chance. Let them live with the charity they once denied me. The local newspaper, which had celebrated my success, ran a follow-up story that was less flattering to my family. They interviewed former employees of Brandon's dealership who described his terrible management. They dug into public records and found Arthur's co-signed loan and its foreclosure. The headline read, "The Hometown Billionaire and the Family That Didn't Believe." It featured anonymous quotes from old teachers and neighbors confirming what everyone now knew. Arthur had never supported his younger son's ambitions. Veronica called me after the article ran. How are you holding up? I don't know, I admitted. I thought I'd feel more satisfied. Revenge rarely feels the way we think it will, she said. But here's what you should feel satisfied about. You didn't destroy them out of spite. They destroyed themselves through their own choices. You just refused to save them from the consequences. She was right. I hadn't fabricated anything. I hadn't lied. I'd simply documented the truth and let it speak for itself. Meanwhile, I was building something that mattered. I established the Susan Wellington Memorial Scholarship Fund, named after my mother, providing full-ride college scholarships to students from my hometown who wanted to study engineering and computer science. Every year, 10 students would get the chance I had to create, to innovate, to dream. students whose families might not believe in them, but who'd have the resources to prove themselves anyway. The scholarship announcement made national news. I gave an interview to a tech magazine where I said, "My mother believed in potential over pedigree, in innovation over tradition. This fund honors her vision." I never mentioned my father. His absence from the story spoke louder than any accusation. Arthur's social standing in the community evaporated. He'd built his identity on being the practical man, the wise counselor, the successful parent. Now he was known as the father who'd been too blind to see his own son's potential, who'd stolen an inheritance and given it to the wrong child. People began avoiding him at church, at the grocery store, at town events. The whispers followed him everywhere. "That's the man whose son became a billionaire. No thanks to him." The family that rejected Caleb is now living with the consequences of their own choices, while Caleb is building a legacy that helps others avoid the pain he experienced. But there's still one final confrontation coming, the moment when father and son must face each other one last time. 6 months after the conference room confrontation, Arthur showed up at my private home. I lived in a modest house on the outskirts of the city, nothing ostentatious, just comfortable and peaceful. He looked 10 years older than the last time I'd seen him. His clothes hung loose on his frame. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something that looked like genuine remorse. My security team called to ask if they should send him away. I almost said yes. Then I realized I needed this closure as much as he did. "Let him in," I said. We sat in my living room, an awkward silence stretching between us. Finally, Arthur spoke. "I'm not here to ask for money," he said. "I'm here to tell you that you were right, and I was wrong. About everything." I waited. "My father lost everything in a business venture when I was 15, he continued, his voice shaking. "We went from comfortable to homeless in 6 months. I watched him break from the shame of it. I swore I'd never take risks, never gamble on dreams, never let ambition destroy my security." He looked at me with tears in his eyes. "I projected that fear onto you. I convinced myself I was protecting you when I was really protecting myself, from watching another man I loved lose everything chasing a dream. So you stole my inheritance instead," I said quietly. "Yes." He didn't try to defend it. I told myself Brandon was the safe bet, that he had a proven business model, that I was being practical. But the truth is, I was being a coward. And worse, I was being a thief. The admission hung in the air. "I don't expect your forgiveness," Arthur said. "I don't deserve it. I just needed you to know that your mother, she saw something in you I was too afraid to see. She would have backed your dream without hesitation. And if she were here, she'd be ashamed of what I did." It was the most honest thing he'd ever said to me. "I forgive you," I said, surprising myself with the words. "Not because you deserve it, but because carrying this anger is exhausting. But forgiveness doesn't mean we go back to how things were." "I know," he whispered. "You taught me the most valuable lesson of my life, Dad. You taught me that the only person I could truly count on was myself. That approval from others, even from family, can't be the foundation of my dreams." It was a brutal lesson, but it made me who I am. He nodded slowly, accepting the bitter truth that his worst behavior had inadvertently created my greatest strength. "I bought your house," I admitted. "I'm the anonymous landlord. The rent you're paying goes into a trust that will eventually transfer the property back to you and Pamela when you die. You won't be homeless." Arthur looked stunned. "Why would you do that?" "Because Mom loved that house. Because despite everything, you're still my father. And because mercy doesn't require reconciliation. It just requires being better than the person who hurt you." He left shortly after, and we both knew it was probably the last meaningful conversation we'd ever have. There would be no tearful reunion, no Sunday dinners, no rebuilt relationship. Some breaks can't be fully mended. And that's okay. Today, I'm 36 years old. Nexus Stream is worth over $10 billion and employs 2,000 people. But that's not what I'm proudest of. I'm married to Veronica's daughter, Claire, a public defender who fights for people the system has forgotten. We met at a charity event, and she fell in love with me before she knew about my money, when I was just that intense tech guy who cared too much about data compression. We have a 3-year-old daughter named Susan, after my mother. Last week, Susan sat on my lap in my home office, watching me code. "Daddy, what are you making?" she asked. "Something new," I told her. "Something that didn't exist yesterday. Can I make something too?" I pulled up a kid's coding program on a second monitor and showed her how to make a simple animation. Her eyes lit up as she moved blocks of code around and watched a cartoon character dance across the screen. You can make anything you can imagine, sweetheart, I told her. And nobody, not even me, gets to tell you that your dreams are too big or too risky or too impossible. Your only job is to imagine it and work hard enough to make it real. She hugged me tight and went back to her animation. In that moment, surrounded by my family and the life I'd built from nothing, I realized something profound. The best revenge isn't destroying the people who hurt you. It's becoming so happy, so successful, so fulfilled that their opinion of you becomes completely irrelevant. My father was wrong about me. But more importantly, I no longer need him to admit it. I'm free.